back, had a bit of a break there, a few days up north, and went and saw Rocky Nats, which was pretty good, and also checked out a bit of Rockhampton, which is a beautiful area. So anyway, into this episode, we're going to tackle fixing the door gaps and making sure that they're primo. Bit of an update. So I've been sanding the cowl panel. Got that down to 300, 600 and 800. Done this to 3 and 6. I'm not going to go any further than that. It's fine for the firewall. And the insides of the door jambs and etc. I've also done. Just got to run over this back rear quarters with there's some areas that I didn't spray last time. Basically, I've got these two guards test fit on each side and not entirely happy with them. So as you can see, the gap on that is pretty wide, but that's as good as I can get it. I've been flapping around with this for a good hour, and because I've done some major repairs on that door and also the bottom of the guard, yeah, whatever's happened along the way is making it very hard to line up. So something's pretty much probably out a little bit. I would say the bottom of the door potentially has sort of come out at some point. And yeah, that's making it very hard to line up. So it's a real balancing act between the front guard and these two hinge points, and then, levering it back and forth and then pulling it out. So, that's pretty much acceptable at that level there. It's pretty even as opposed to the other side as well. So it's just that cowl panel gap is pretty horrendous, but I can't do anything about it. So unfortunately, that's going to have to just be it. And so the plan of attack, this side is better. You can see that, yeah, the gaps there. There wasn't as much work on this door. And they're also on the other side. I remember I did that whole quarter panel as well. So I don't think that would have changed anything. And as I said, yeah, it's probably about the same distance for this gap and this gap as on the other side as well. It's very similar. So it's just that, yeah, that cowl join there is, it's not tight enough. But anyway, I just can't do anything more about it. So that is going to have to be the way it is. And so I'm glad I did this test fit now because, there's a fair bit of, I had to do a little bit of hammer and dolly work, and in the process it's sort of chipped a bit of the primer. So you don't want to be doing that with fully painted panels. So the plan of attack for this ute, for the way I'm going to spray it, for a couple of reasons. I'm going to take the guards and the doors off after I've lined this up, and I'm just going to spray the shell. And there's a couple of reasons I'm going to do it in that method. And the first reason is because it's not a professional booth, and the overspray is pretty horrendous, even with this second fan that I'm going to be putting in, which I still haven't tested, but it's not going to be as good as a proper booth. So to reduce the overspray, I'm going to reduce the amount of surface area that I have to be spraying. And the one way to do that is to not do the whole ute in one hit. And so that way I don't have to tape up the door jambs, I don't have to do the insides of the doors, insides of the guards, etc. I can paint the shell and then paint the doors and the guards separately. And the way to get around the risks of having tone change in your metallic, I will hang the doors and the guards in the same orientation that they would be on the ute. The same method and drop coat angle that I would spraying the quarter panel, and I'll apply that technique to those guards and the doors. That way I'm going to eliminate any layup or different layup of the metallic particles and therefore tone change over the car. It's also going to be easier for me because I know that it's quite a long distance when you're painting a whole car to try and flick the gun on these joins here so you don't get some overlap. I'm not confident I'll be able to do that, so by reducing or eliminating those panels and doing them separately, I won't have to worry about that as technique as well. Also don't have to then back tape all this stuff and flap around with that. I'll also paint the bonnet separately as well, which was always going to be the case. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that that technique will work as long as I mentioned, make sure that I orientate the panels, the doors and the guards in that vertical position and maintain a similar angle with the gun. So all in all, starting to come together, not wrapped with the gaps on those doors and the guards, but I'm hoping that might come together a little bit more accurately once I'm fully committed to bolting them in and finessing them with the other bolts. At the moment, there's only one bolt there and it's just resting here, so it's not fully bolted in with a bracket, etc. on this radiator support panel. So with all those things in mind, I might have a little bit more leeway, and also I'm trying to do it one man up, so it's really a two-man job. This rust repair continues. I did buy the rust repair panel for the HZ and it's no good. So it's way too small. The WB is a totally different panel, and it's also got a back piece of metal that's spot welded onto that front section, and the whole panel is about $400. So big difference between the HZ one, HQ to HZ, which is $189. And I don't know why that is. I actually rang Rare Spares and I said, why can't you just get this front section? Because you've basically got to get it and either commit to cutting this whole area back support panel off and then welding this new section on, or unpicking all the spot welds from this and then all the spot welds on the new brand new $400 panel and then putting it back on. So that to me just seems ridiculous and a waste of money when you can buy a whole new radiator support panel for a HQ for around about $440. So I don't understand why Rare Spares are doing that. And yeah, it's a complete waste of money to buy it just for a little section like that. So I'm going to just do it the hard way and get a few patches and patch that up because I can't justify $400 for all the work required. So if Rare Spares could actually just, you know, sell that front section, a lot more of these radiator support panels would be saved and reduce the price of them. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm going to now keep tinkering away and then take these guards and doors back off and then start prepping the shell for paint. Right, so monumental effort, but sometimes you got to go backwards to go forwards. So initially, if you all remember that I said that I was just going to leave these door gaps as the way they rolled out of the factory. But when I've gone to assemble everything, they were just way out and unacceptable. I couldn't do it. So I've gone through and pretty much gone backwards. I wanted to be spraying the body today, but yeah, there's no point because I'll just damage it when I'm repairing all these. So anyway, I got some welding rod. I prefer 3.2, but I only had 2.5 mil, and I just knocked the flux off. And essentially, I just went around to all the areas that were wide and just built up weld with this rod and just formed it around the edge. You would have seen that done before. So yeah, pretty much just all the wide gaps I've just filled in with this rod. Around the cowl panel here, filled in that section, and right there was a bit bigger there, and then this seems to taper off down to here, and I've had to remove some body filler and actually shave some metal there, so I'll have to repair that as well. But it's looking much better, and yeah, all this work, I don't want to get to the point where it's just assembled, it looks like crap. So this guard is finessed. It's not perfect around here. It sort of sags a little bit there, but that's as good as I can get it. And they're pretty much even on the actual plane. So I'm liking that. I've just got a bolt there. There's actually not bolted in down the bottom as well, so that could probably draw in a little bit. But I had too much filler down there essentially, so I've got to just taper that back and then just put a little skim over the bare metal where I've done it, and a skim on the edges here and here, prime it again, and then that's it. So I've done this section. This donut's getting his plane out. He loves it. So yeah, I've got to go over the other side now and do that. And then once that's finished, I can start prepping the shell for paint. So a little bit more progress. I managed to get the nose cone down, and for those that remember, this nose cone isn't the original nose cone. I went and got this as it was a nice straight panel. I had a little ding in the front of the nose cone on the original, which was the original panel, and yeah, so back then a little ding was well out of my skill level, but now I look at it and just go, absolute piece of piss. So I could actually just hammer and dolly the original out and just put a little skim of filler. Just depends on how original you want to keep it. Keep all the original panels, or just put a fresh one on. They seem to be exactly the same shape and style. However, the original seems to fit just a little bit better. So obviously the gaps, I've gapped it from the pillar, the front of the quarter panel to the guard, and I'm happy with all that. Obviously welded there just to keep it even. So now push forward, and then this is the final gap. So you can see there's a little dint just pushing out there that's stopping it from going in, probably 2 or 3 mil, which would even up that there. This rad support can sort of flex back and forth. So when I first put it on, I was like, my God, it's an inch out. But then I realized that you can actually, these rubber mounts down here, flex a little bit back and forth. So as you sort of need it, you can adjust it back and forth. And then once you've bolted it up to these brackets in here and on the guard, it should stay. Same with this side, just adjust as you need it. So yeah, I don't know whether I'll get the original nose cone and chuck it on and see. So I've done a bit of research on this ute after speaking to a couple of people online. Originally I thought this ute was just a 6-cylinder crappy old commercial ute, but it turns out that it's actually a L36 tagged commercial ute, which is basically a V8 commercial ute from factory, which I don't know if anyone knows, but are actually quite rare. Usually people would go the Kingswood with the V8, and so you didn't tend to see a lot of commercial variants with a V8 in it. They tended to be more 6-cylinders. So to find that out was a welcome surprise, and I can't believe I didn't actually check those tags earlier. So yeah, from factory spec, it was a white buckskin interior, 253, turbo 350, column auto. So yeah, not a Kingswood, but probably the next best thing. So yeah, it just makes it a little bit more unique and justifies the amount of time that I've spent on this. All right, so this guard I'm having a little bit more trouble with. So the door gap from factory is pretty similar. I reckon this cowl is sitting slightly higher than what it was originally. Probably because if you remember back to one of the very first episodes I did, I really went to town on this whole section and ripped out the plenum and rebuilt it all myself instead of just buying that Rare Spares plenum chamber and then putting that back in. So, considering it was very early on in my skill level and very early on in the build, chances are that I probably did get it a little bit higher. So, but that's fine. You know, you can't even tell, and I'll just put a little bit of weld bar here and taper it out just to even that up. It doesn't make one iota of difference once you start playing with this door anyway. So you can see the guard here. I'm happy with that gap. It's probably a little bit tight there, so I could probably take it back, but you can see it's quite tight there, and then really a cavernous kind of opening here, but you can see the door is lined up with that bottom sill. So, and up here is, you know, pretty much where it needs to be once I push that in, you know, tighten that up. So the way I'm trying to go and sort this out is just have a look at where my gaps are on the top, follow it down, gets really tight there, opens up there, it's sort of pretty even, and then thins out here. So that tells me that it's pretty much, you know, angled in on the top left and needs to come out. So push this way, or bring that back this way slightly. And the only way I've done, the best way to do that I found from the last one is you've got to bolt up all the hinges properly. At the moment, I've got them all loose so that I can just pretty much play with back and forth, up and down, and the in and out, which is the hardest part. So, you know, trying to get your panels, you got to pull this top out, you got to push the bottom in, or bring the whole thing out just to even it up, plus up and down. And so it's a bit of a nightmare by yourself. It's definitely a two-man job, and when it's painted, it'll definitely be a two-man job, and there'll be a lot of tape going around because, you know, most of the hard work's done now, and that's why I'm doing it, because I can bang and smash this panel, and I know that I'll just give it a trim and a little bit of sandback, skim of filler, some primer, and then I'm back to where I was again. But the last thing you want to be doing is painted panels installing them when you haven't done all this hard work first. So I should have done this when it was on the rotisserie, but you know the story. I was waiting for the plenum, waiting for the cowl panel, then the guards, all that kind of thing. So it doesn't matter, just got to do it now. So it set me back a little bit. Anyway, so I'm just going to start doing what I did with the other door, and I'll pretty much just start playing around with this door. Now that the guard's, pretty happy with where the guard's at. I've done some work down here as well, and I've sort of made sure that is now sitting in, and although the gap is slightly uneven there, the body filler's cracked there, so I'm going to have to take that off and redo that. So hence why you should definitely do this before you do the filler. So anyway, I've done that section there down the bottom, and I've got that reasonably even. You can see the gap at the bottom there, but yeah, I've just got to maybe put some rod on the inside of this guard. This door's sitting pretty good, so I'll probably do the guard and do the welding rod up to that point there, and then just shave as I need it. Bucker. So I'm back. I've done the passenger side now, so I've gapped. This was a lot worse this side, a lot harder to get. So instead of doing the door, this time I did the guard. And they still line up. The nose cone I've got on there, you know, you might be a couple of mil out, but the tolerances and the gaps on these, anyway, you'll never notice. So come to final assembly, I could probably shove that back, I reckon, a couple of mil that way, but I'm really happy with the front of that now. So yeah, you can see that bottom section of the door and this bit here are pretty close compared to what they were previously. That was a huge gap. And then I also played around with the cowl line there as well. So just welded some rod here, and also welded this little section here on the tip of that guard there. That was sort of shaved off and bent, so I've reinforced it with some weld and then squared it off there on a slight angle, so it's just nice and even now, and it follows that line right across. So you've seen these gaps on factory, they can be slightly tighter than that, but I'm really happy with that gap. That's much better than what it was. And on this side, I have put a little bit of weld here because it was sort of, they tend to be a little bit gappy here compared to the rest. So that, as I mentioned, that is a little bit wider than the front at the moment, but it probably needs to come back a couple of mil, so that would even that out. And I've also done a little bit on the front top of the door here because there was sort of a bit of a gap at the door at the top, and I tried to square this door off as much as possible, with the hinges, and sort of tilt it forward, and then you've got a gap here, and then you tilt it back, and then it's too far there, and that was pretty much bang on, and there was still a gap up here, so I don't know why that was, whether it was just the way it rolled out of the factory. So anyway, I filled a little bit of bead in there and tapered it off slightly. It probably still needs a little bit more tapering, and that'll do. So just show the other side as well. It's looking the goods now. That nose cone, as I said, that's from the HZ, and I may go back to the original. And so this is the other door, as I showed you before. This one's really nice. So really, now I'm going to have to go back and do the repairs on this door, on the door and the guards. But today, I really wanted to take these off now that they're all gapped, and I've eliminated damaging any paint. So I wanted to start prepping this and get it into the booth for final spray. Only problem is it's 17 degrees today and not showing any signs of the sun. So it may be a bit cold. In fact, it is too cold to paint, really. I'd like it to be 20 degrees minimum, purely because it's in the shed and I don't have a spray booth that's going to be warmed up. It's not to say you can't spray with on a colder day. It's just you've got to potentially put your paint in a bucket of warm water, and be better if you could heat your panels as well, so they're not too cold. But yeah, at the moment it's reasonably warm with the sun coming out, but I just don't know. So I'm just going to prep it. Got a lot of work to do. So I've got another fan as well. Same deal as the other one. I'm going to base this one in the floor. I've also bought just a mount, plastic mount that I'll attach into the side of the booth. I'll sit this on the ground, so the unit will be outside of the booth, and then I'll use that extendable, retractable ducting to attach it and then go out the door. So that's going to give me twice the extraction power, which is what I need. And then I'm going to have to go around and just try to tape up any holes in the booth that are allowing too much air in. And then just give it a good gurney out and clean it up a bit. So that's going to take a fair while. I may even take half a day off tomorrow because I know it's going to be 20 degrees tomorrow just to get the shell done. So yeah, a fair bit of taping to go and cleaning. So I'm just going to have to start getting in there and cleaning up and get the booth ready now. so the ute is in the booth and I was taping up frantically. It was an 18-degree day and I wanted to get it in here and paint it because we have about 14 days that I can see that are going to be in the early to mid-teens, and that's no higher, and I don't really want to paint this anything lower than 18 degrees. So if there's any pro guys out there, they've got some tips for spraying in the cold, let me know. This obviously is not a heated booth. I've fixed up the gaps in here. I've also cleaned her up a bit, and I've got another spray unit down low. So I'm going to put a bit of fiberglass there for a filter, but that's going to basically pump out towards the door. So I'm going to have double fan, and hopefully that will create a little bit more of a draft. Just tape the doors up, tape the rear windscreen up. Yeah, that's as far as I've got. So I've got to obviously tape all this up. That's just a bit of dust from sanding back. Might have put a bit of primer on here. I noticed there's a tiny little bubble there from the filler, which really surprised me because I've been very vigilant on this bodywork. So it just shows you, just a little bit of different light and you can pick something up that you didn't think was there. So I'm going to just prime that to see if I can actually do a wet test to see if it's still there. I've just feathered it out a bit more. Everything else is pretty good to go. So yeah, I've taped up the obviously the front windscreen, all in the cowl panel. So I've just got to tape the underneath, take the wheels off, put it on some jack stands. I did think about hanging the tailgate in situ as well, but I've got a spray inside here, so I may do the tailgate at the same time, or I might just leave it. There's a fair bit of real estate here to spray, and I just don't want to overwhelm this booth. So, I want to keep that overspray from the clear. It just becomes a real cloud. So I just want to try and keep it down. So anyway, that's it. I'm signing off. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to spray it, which is really disappointing. So I think the next day is the 12th of May. That I can see is the 18th. That is 18 degrees. The other alternative is if I get one of those jet gas heaters and just sit it out here, aim it towards the booth, for half an hour or something, lock in as much heat as possible, then close it down. Obviously don't have the gas heater running at all when I'm spraying, or afterwards as well, and just try and collect that heat as much as possible. And that hopefully might get me over the line. Also, I watched a gunman video and he suggested putting your clear and your hardener and stuff in a bucket of hot water and then sort of measuring it afterwards with a temperature gauge. So I'll probably do that as well. But if it is 18 degrees, I don't think I'll have to do any of that. It's pretty warm when the sun's out around here. So yeah, the shed would be pretty warm by about 12 o'clock. So if I tape it up in the meantime and just wait and bide my time, and when the day comes, all I'll be doing is I won't be rushing. I'll just have this full day to wait, be calculated, and spray it as best job as I possibly can. Anyway, I'm not even going to sign off. This is it. I'll see you next episode. Cheers.